Betsy and Thomas here. Today we are going to be decoding a Trump tweet. It's just one tweet today, Thomas. Today is October 21st, but it's a big juicy tweet. And it reads, all levels of government and law enforcement are watching carefully for voter fraud, including during early voting. Cheat at your own peril. Violators will be subject to maximum penalties, both civil and criminal. Do you think he really means it?
Well, look at Andrew Gillum's brother, Marcus, who just got third-degree felony charges for voter fraud. He also was part of down in Florida, Andrew
Yeah, he
Gillum.
lived in Chicago and he was voting in Florida.
Yeah, and he was part of the Tallahassee mob scene there with Andrew Gillum, who is being supported by George Soros outright. George Soros has come out now quite clearly and just poured money into super PACs and particularly poured money into advertisements at the end. That's what he likes to do. He knows that subliminal programming in the last 2 weeks before an election on television can actually sway the population. And they've done statistics on just how easy it is to do so. Well, you now see George Soros coming out and giving money to specific candidates in these states where the election is absolutely critical. Plus, we saw that he gave $1.5 billion to the Atlantic Council's group called the Digital Forensic Laboratory programming, which has gone into Facebook. And so not only are the algorithms in Google been changed so that they support Democrats and are against Republicans, particularly conservatives, but also Facebook is using this program, what we call the George Soros Truth Ministry, that's being used in Europe, is now being used on Facebook. This is all criminal, and we're going to tell you what's going to happen to those people.
Well, good, because, when most people hear about election rigging or, what Trump just tweeted out, they're thinking about people going to the polls like this Gillum guy and voting in the wrong precinct, or they may be thinking of people who are illegal aliens, I should say, invaders coming in and voting, the things that are on the surface. But what we're going to talk about today are the things that are behind the scenes that are even a greater violation. And we want to call it out right now that as citizens, these things are illegal. And if anyone's doing them, we expect that our president will stay true to his tweet and put the full measure and weight of the law behind their misdeeds.
Remember, Trump took the Russian election meddling narrative and turned it around, made an executive order saying he's going after everyone who interferes in the election, everyone, under any circumstances.
Now, would that include Mitt Romney and his son Tag?
Yes, and their, Interheart Civic and the
Smartmatic machines, and it's all this Optex software. But what I'm saying is that it's not just the guy that you don't know that comes and votes illegal. It's also these guys that have a lot at stake to win this election.
Well, you have put out so much that we're bouncing around here, but there's so much to bounce around with. For instance, as you just pointed out, Mitt Romney and his son run a company that handles the election machines in 17 states. How in the world do you think that can possibly not be corrupt? And that's how he's probably won the previous election that he's did in Utah, and he's probably going to win the next time he runs. Because why? He and his son control the voting machines. And those voting machines are all run by the same software called Optech, which was created back in the 70s in Venezuela by the rogue CIA, working with the United Nations, and particularly through Lord Malloch-Brown, who we've told you all about his evil. But anyway, that was Jimmy Carter, the rogue CIA president, completely supported by BCCI, the Pakistani rogue CIA bank, that supported him in his corrupt election. And we're going to get to the corrupt financing campaign election money that's going on now, but let's just back up for a second. Every set of these types of digital machines, whether they be Sequoia, whether they be Diebold, whether they be Interheart Civic, ES&S, it doesn't matter what they are. ES&S, again, just recently came out and was blasted because they showed what everyone had put up on the alternative news, that anybody walking by with your cell phone with the 2.0 version of PC Anywhere can change an election machine at the moment that it is sending in the tallies. And that is when they are intercepted, and they are oftentimes sent to the man in the middle. That would be Karl Rove, who set that up so beautifully that now they actually, during the Obama administration and the last election, they sent everything through Homeland Security so that all of the numbers had to be sent through the U.S. Digital Service, which was set up by Eric Schmidt, $1.5 billion to help rig the last election. And also, Hillary paid to have the last election rigged through Facebook and through Google. So we've revealed all of that to you. So just go back and look at those, the evidence that we've given you.
And in the production notes, there's a link to a post where I have many of the articles that show the vast ways that election rigging can take place.
But we need to look at the bigger rigging. The bigger rigging is what Trump is pointing out. First off, we have to give him credit. His Twitter account is the greatest political machine ever created in America political history. He is by far the best leader of any party in U.S. political history. And what he's doing is just showing that the lies that mainstream media perpetrate nonstop, 98% of the time towards him, he counteracts it. Because why? The people who really are awake, those who are woke, those who are part of the walk away movement from the Democrats, because they finally woke up to the mob rule of the Democrats who lie. Democrats don't want borders because they know that their virtue signaling and all of their rhetoric about the way they support illegal aliens, and they want open borders, and they want illegal aliens to be able to be citizens instantaneously, and throw out all immigration rules, and throw out ICE, and throw out Border Patrol.
All they want are invaders to disrupt America. That's all it's about. And if they can go in there and vote, that's even better.
That's the whole point. They are hoping that when these people cross the border and hear this nonsense out of the mouth of Democrats, that they in fact will vote for them. They'll sneak in and they'll vote. Well, last election, only a few people, literally under 5 people, were charged with voter fraud. Unbelievable. When we saw buses of people going back and forth between the states and New England, where they would sometimes vote in 3 states in one day, or just go from poll to poll and vote many, many times over and over, or the governor of New York State or the mayor of New York says, hey, come on in. We don't care. You're an illegal alien. Vote all you want. Just keep on voting. Guess what? Last time, they tried to set people who wanted to vote for Trump on fire. They tried to beat them up. If you wore a MAGA hat to the polls or anywhere near the polls, you can't wear it in the poll, but anywhere near the polls, you could get beat up. This time, reverse. Now, there's going to be people dressed up, as Betsy Ross has suggested, in their ICE T-shirts and jackets.
Remember, don't put police on it. Just put ICE in big white letters with your cap and your black T-shirt with the white lettering, and just hang around. In fact, the rumors already started that President Trump will be sending ICE agents out to all the polls.
And this has caused so many illegal aliens to leave our country earlier on, to basically start to follow the rule of law. So now that the rule of law has been enforced by Trump, and this is the election where he's in charge, we are not going to see as much corruption as before. We're going to see people getting caught. We're going to see those who are the corruptocrats, who Eric Holder said, get out there and resist. I just love what he said. Career employees need to continue the same flow that they've always done. In other words, resistance, slow walking, and basically obfuscation of the truth. And so you have Eric Holder out there literally telling people in the government to resist. In other words, to cheat, to lie, to do anything you can in this election to make sure that the Democrats will get the votes they need. But it's not going to happen that way, folks. We've already seen the results. We've already heard that everyone in the United States government that has anything to do with election, they are all on high status.
Well, now let's talk about dude Zuckerberg and that chick Sheryl Sandberg. They're behind the scenes. They're not on the ground at the polling stations, but they're rigging the elections just as much as those that would show up at the polls and cast illegal votes, because they're messing around with the algorithms in Facebook, and so is anybody. If you are sitting at Google or YouTube, and your job responsibility is to modify the algorithms to favor one candidate over another, looks to me like you fall into this thing where Trump says violators will be subject to maximum penalties, both civil and criminal. And these civil penalties, we've had several Aim for Truthers who have prepared writs of mandamus at their state level. And you see Secretary of States around the country that are rebuffing these attempts by patriots to make sure that the votes are counted properly. What's going to happen to these Secretary of States? What's going to happen to these bottom feeders like Sandberg and Zuckerberg?
Well, I think we're seeing the end of social media as we know it now because of the RICO. This is racketeering, what's going on. This is election fraud, election manipulation. And every time that they change the algorithm for Hillary, they need to admit that is a campaign donation, or for Democrats instead of Republicans. Those are campaign donations. They are no longer platforms of free speech. As a matter of fact, Zuckerberg said the other day, can't do free speech anymore. Just too hard to manage. In other words, they are a broadcasting...
After they ripped us off, Litter Technologies, for the patents and took money from the United States government to build their platform, now they're going to tell us, sorry, no free speech allowed.
And remember, they are given discounts because of net neutrality. Net neutrality is ended. And so therefore, you're going to see the end of these big FANG companies who dominate the internet, dominate the bandwidth, and don't pay for it, and then dominate the opinion in what they are broadcasting. They try to say that they are a platform for free speech, but they are not. They are a broadcasting group that is a propaganda group, and they need to admit who they are politically supporting so that then that can be adjusted in the campaign election donations. Because $1.5 billion donated by Eric Schmidt to create the U.S. Digital Service was never counted as a campaign donation to Hillary. George Soros, the first election of Barack Obama, $2 billion behind the scenes. Super PACs running the greatest number of political ads in the last weeks before the election ever in history. Then again, second time, when Obama ran, $2 billion, same thing, behind the scenes, same thing. Subliminally programmed, paid political announcements just at the end of the entire election. Same thing then for Hillary, $2 billion, plus he had bet $1 billion that the stock market would crash when Trump was elected. It actually started to zoom higher and higher. He lost that. So really you could say $3 billion that Soros lost, but $2 billion of that was directly to the DNC and these illegal ways that they had of taking generalized donations throughout the states and combining them into the Hillary victory campaign illegally. This is well known. We also can see through the WikiLeaks that George Soros was telling John Podesta what to do, and John was telling Hillary and the rest of the campaign what to do. And they were the ones who came up, of course, with the lie, the smear campaign against Trump with the Russian dossier, because they knew that that was the number one thing that was their weakness, Hillary's connection to the Russians. So when we're talking about meddling in the 2016, it is astounding. But the meddling now, Trump has already said he's going to put sanctions on everyone who does this.
Would this include putting sanctions on the United Kingdom for their egregious election meddling from the Privy Council down through where we see it at the polls?
Well, that has to come out through the Spygate investigations that are unraveling.
Why do we
right
have
now.
to wait? I mean, if Thomas and Betsy and all of our audience knows about it, how come the Department of Justice isn't doing something about it?
Well, let's remember, Cambridge Analytica was accused of helping Trump's campaign. They did not. That material that they got was nothing. But it went back to their mother company, Strategic Communications Laboratories, which was ran by, of course, Jeffrey Patty and supported by his group, Lord Malloch-Brown, and the other members.
Richard Dearlove.
Well, Dearlove ran the Stephen Halper Spygate attack, which is all meddling. Christopher Steele, Andrew Wood, Alexander Downer, all of these people were involved in this. And so what's going to happen is Trump is working behind the scenes with sanctions. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of sanctions on people that no one knows about. So right now, are there going to be sanctions on the companies, for instance, China Daily or China, the newspapers in America that are Chinese, that are running propaganda as literally foreign agents? Yes, we're going to see action against them. Are we going to see the fake editorials and fake articles that are being written in papers throughout America to basically defame Trump and his tariffs on China? Trump's already called them out. That is, of course, racketeering. That is, of course, election meddling, because they were run under false names, under false aegis, under false pretenses. And so, yes, expect that there are right now sanctions being put on China because of their election meddling.
Well, speaking of China, of course, you can't leave that subject without talking about the very corrupt Dianne Feinstein and her husband and this ISIS management software.
Yes, and as we pointed out, that is the way they control elections. Avid is run by ISIS management, and they also control another group which has changed its name, but they control the election night results, which get candidates to capitulate based upon false information. This is what presidential elections often have done. They capitulate that night based upon those false statistics produced by a very, very corrupt group of people.
Not to mention the propaganda days and weeks ahead of time on the news, where these newscasters read the same propaganda from the Avid script, that they all do, all the way up to the election.
Dianne Feinstein's husband owns 10% of Avid, which is a controlling interest. Does she really write the news? You can bet that the people that she is working with, the Chinese and also the corrupt Democrats, and particularly Valerie Jarrett, Obama, Eric Holder, they all write the news, and they change the poll numbers. Notice that the poll numbers had Hillary winning with a landslide, and she did not. She lost. Trump won with a landslide. So you have to add anywhere from 10 to 15 points to anything they tell you about Trump and the Republicans. So you can guarantee that Avid and that script that's being read by the mainstream media is going to be charged before long with monopoly and with racketeering, with RICO charges, because they know that they're lies, they know they're promoting lies, and this is against the, it's against many laws, but the Federal Communications Commission, the Federal Trade Commission, all of them state that you cannot lie for the purposes of manipulating your audience when you are supposed to be running on the freedom of speech, when there's no freedom of speech, when it's propaganda and it's a contrived lie, and it's being perpetrated among many mainstream media people using the same exact tool, the Avid ISIS management tool, which gives them the script to read. And so that is where they have in the past always won, because they would say, they would get the Democrats with their sound bites saying, open borders, come on in, everybody needs to vote, anyone in this country is a citizen, blah, blah, blah. And then this is going out, and this kind of propaganda, sedition, treason is being put out by the mainstream media. So it used to be that illegal aliens voted because they thought that was to their advantage. Now, go ahead, vote. I dare you. And see if you aren't caught. Because we need to send about 1 million people to jail for voter fraud this year. And we've had more calls for paper ballots and for backup, whether it be digital backup, but paper backup for even the digital machines. And in almost every state, that has now actually been enacted, that they all agree that they're going to have a paper backup system.
That's not right. There are Secretary of States, especially in states where they want to hold on to the Democrats, where the Secretary of States are not cooperating in that manner. And I'm saying if they can't prove that every vote that came in through their digital, electronic, corrupt machines isn't backed by some kind of second verifiable way or paper ballot, then they are a part of the election rigging.
George Soros, believe it or not, concentrated a huge amount of money into the positions of Secretary of State.
Yes, he did that several years ago.
And so he has been buying them off wholesale. And so, yes, the states themselves have rules, but the Secretary of States are the ones who change the vote.
Well, they're the ones that can operate this man in the middle.
Correct.
Thing. And I have an article linked to that in the notes below.
All they have to do is tell people when it is they're going to send in the confirmed count. because at the moment that the Optech software is exposed to going onto the internet, it is vulnerable to manipulation by literally junior high school students who've demonstrated this again and again. They literally took every type of voting machine used in America, and every one of them were able to be hacked in a matter of minutes. So there is no such thing as a really secure digital system in America. We need to go back to paper ballots and putting ink on your thumb and having a chain of custody that is absolutely infallible with bipartisan chain of custody. Will that happen? I think this is the election that's going to show how crooked our elections are, and after that, it's going to get straightened out for the 2020 because Trump doesn't want to get ripped off again, and he has the power to do this. So now he has every law enforcement agency in the federal government focusing on voter fraud of all types, whether it be cyber attacks.
Well, I sure hope he doesn't have the FBI looking at it, because we know that they can't find crime.
And anyway, the FBI was dismantled by a guy in his pajamas, so we don't need to worry about the FBI anymore. But that every agency is trying to find these criminals, and they're going to find them. And as more and more people go to jail, that straightens out those who realize that we are no longer in the Obama, Clinton lawlessness age, the age of falsehood politics, where they simply, those were designer votes. Those votes were literally created by cyber tools. And those cyber tools, the template for winning the election that Hillary paid out of GSA government funds, was written for Facebook, because they were able to say that they actually did statistics on who they were able to sway and who were the most easily swayable. And those are the people they not only surveilled, but they targeted and they attacked. And they said even the percentages were skewed, unfortunately, but they even said what percentage of people they were able to effectively change their mind, because this is what Sir Geoffrey Patty, this is what Lord Malloch-Brown and Strategic Communications Limited Laboratories, they designed these things so that they have been affecting elections in 100 countries. 44 elections in America were designed and manipulated by Strategic Communications Laboratories. It is now closed down. We pushed back on them so hard when they attacked Trump over Cambridge Analytica that when it was revealed who they were, they actually collapsed. They, of course, went into one of their dummy companies. They're the ones getting this second vote in Brexit going right now. The second vote in Brexit started. No one wanted a second vote in Brexit. George Soros paid 10,000 people to go out onto the streets in England nonstop every day, door to door, until now. 700,000 people, all paid by George Soros, marched and said that they want a second vote on Brexit. The British don't want a second vote. They want to get out of the European Union. George Soros wants to keep them there so that he can control the British money that is in the central bank for the European Union.
Well, of course, the Queen gives him protection to run havoc around the world.
Absolutely. And let's take the elections in Brazil. There's hardly an election that the Americans, through the CIA, have not attempted to manipulate. Hardly a country in the world that we did not get in and do a George Soros color revolution. We've named them for you, 14 of them. I don't know how people can still allow George Soros to walk on the streets, especially the streets of America. $18 billion in his stolen money from his quantum hedge fund. 18 billion tax-free dollars turned around and given back to America to left-wing, socialist, democratic, 184 non-government organizations that are all active during this election. George Soros is probably going to have, or already has, sanctions on him because of his actions. It doesn't take much to put sanctions on someone from the president. He doesn't even have to have a reason to do so. So mark my words, George Soros gave up that $18 billion early, and now you can see there's certain super PACs that have come out that they're saying, how come these super PACs have infinite money? Again, George Soros, if he thinks that he's going to get away with it, that's like Hillary Clinton thinking that no one listened to Donna Brazile.
No, I push back because Hillary has gotten away with it. George Soros, we've been reporting on George for years. He still gets away with it.
Until we don't know that Hillary didn't run to Shanghai because Trump put sanctions on her. We don't know what Trump is doing. And he doesn't have to say who he's putting sanctions on, but sanctions control the big money people, because once you put sanctions on somebody, that stops the flow of their money. They have lots of assets, but they're into the flow. They need to have a constant flow of money. It's like the flow of blood in their veins. And if they don't have that, then they collapse because they can't take their assets and pour them onto the open market, because that would collapse the markets. There's over 100 between, people actually say easily $100 trillion in offshore accounts. Some say 5 times that, but for sure I will stand by that statistic.
Well, we need to close our borders, not only at the southern, but we need to close our financial borders right before we close the Fed. We need to shut the borders, and all offshore money can't get in.
Absolutely. Trump's going to do that after he's reelected a second time. Now, in Brazil, they're using the Facebook application called WhatsApp, and it basically is just disinformation. So the rest of the world is controlled in their elections by Facebook and Google. Everybody knows that, and Yahoo in some places. But the point is that social media has led these color revolutions of George Soros that were supported by the rogue CIA, but sometimes also the CIA, and oftentimes, like in the 2 color revolutions, the Orange Revolution and the Euro-Maiden Revolution in Ukraine, that was $4.5 billion that we gave through the State Department to Ukraine. That was Newland. What's her name?
Victoria Newland.
Yeah, that was her. She was bragging about it. 4.7. She said, I'm not spending $4.7 billion in Ukraine and then having Paul Manafort come along and put...
Who are these people, and what do they think that they can go over and change elections over in other countries?
$750,000 was spent by Obama, and he came out and said it in public to try to stop Benjamin Netanyahu from being reelected. We interfere in most elections, and we go in with our UN counters and our UN stooges, and they do exit polls. And if the exit polls don't meet our numerical statistics that we are looking for, then we consider, in any country, America considers that election to be invalid, and many times gets another election. Well, even though when Baby Bush was elected, it was 1 to 300 million possibilities that the election was valid.
But when you see that it's the globalists that have infiltrated the American government, and it's their actions that are doing this, that's what we have to roll back. We have absolutely got to shot the globalist here in this country, because these midterm elections, you know what it really is about? It's about America versus communism. That's what it is.
Yeah, and socialism, fascism, yes.
No. It all goes to communism.
Well, that's where our biggest enemies are. That's for sure. Those people who tout communism, but they're actually they're dictators and oligarchs. They're communist oligarchs who are truly fascists, more fascist than even Hitler. China right now is more fascist than Hitler ever was.
Well, imagine Hitler if he had the ability to track everybody electronically.
Oh my! See, that would have been the perfect National Socialist Party dream. And remember, it's socialism, folks, that leads to evil. Look at any place where socialism has even been attempted, and you will see a disaster. It never lasts. Because why? People are not evolved enough. They're just not there yet. They're not ready to live the pure life of sharing with others. They're not ready to look past somebody's color or race or their creed or their nation. No, we're not ready for that. We're still in nationalism, folks, and globalism cannot come except in the minds of those evil sociopaths, those psychopaths who think that if they centralize everything, then they will get their control of it. That's what globalism is. It's the power in the hands of a very, very few people that takes the power from nations and, in fact, derides the nations and their culture and their history and try to annihilate them. That's what's happening in Europe. And basically turning them into the lowest common denominator, the lowest socialist definition of what a human being can be. And that is not what America's about. We're about the highest definition. And we are about Make America Great Again. And soon, any minute, it's going to be Keep America Great Always, because Trump is winning so big out there that 60,000 people had to wait outside of his last talk. 17,000 went in. 60,000 people, approximately, had to wait outside. No one in political U.S. history has ever done anything like that.
That's confusing. I had read that the Houston gathering had 17 spots, but 78,000 had signed up for it. So what are you talking about? What rally are you saying that 60,000 people were on the outside? That's news to me.
No, you just said it. You said 17 went in, and there was
No.
78,000.
But it hasn't happened yet.
Well, that's what people have signed up for. I'm saying, in every one of his things that he does, he has tens of thousands of people. And now there's the new record that 78,000 people wanted in. There were only 17,000 seats.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because people listen very carefully to what you say, and it seemed to me that you were saying something else. Okay, now, speaking of which, about words. You know, I get people who say, oh, you and Thomas, your grammar's awful. The words you use are horrific, and they just don't understand. This, folks, is an information war. You have to bully your opponent in words. We're not going to win it by being nice and using proper grammar.
That'd be like someone going into a court of law and not attacking the person that they are fighting with. You are supposed to do that. I am from the Ozarks, and I apologize if you don't like my grammar, but if I talk the way I really was born, I'd only use a vocabulary 200, and you wouldn't understand half of what I said. So you're lucky that you can understand anything we say.
It's this political correctness that has kept us from calling out BS the way it is.
And sometimes, as you say, Betsy, we get a little worked up, and we have to just call it the way it is, and we have to literally play whack-a-mole with the evil ones whose heads keep popping up in this game. And sorry, but that's the way that it's supposed to be done. You personalize it, because when you personalize it, then you have, let's see, what's it been, 10, 12, 15 people who have all quit from the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, because they were all guilty? Well, that's what we want. We want those career politicians, those career employees that keep the same old status quo going, to simply pack it up and leave, or pack it up and go to jail, because we're tired of it.
Yes, and the other thing I wanted to add is they use all the rules for radicals against us and have been for a long time. All we're doing is using the same on them.
And when a Pelosi or a Schumer comes out and they cuss and they scream and they accuse the Republicans and Trump himself of every vile thing, literally he has been accused of every vile thing that there is. But if he says horseface, and she does look like a horse face, then strike the S, by the way.
Actually,
they
I was
freak out.
At the other end. But
they freak out. I mean, why do they freak out when someone turns and uses their methods on them, which is Trump? That is what Trump is doing. He is using the Democratic mob method of basically turning around on them and showing that they are the mob. They are the ones who are basically out of control, who are lawless, who don't want borders, who don't want anything. They don't want law. They don't want a balanced budget. They don't want anything that you would want if you were a true American. So I'm sorry to have to say it, but the demon rats have gone and shown who they are. And now that we have Bernie out there with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the rest of the literally fascist socialists, sorry, that's what they are, it shows who they are. And they can't possibly win because their party is going to be split by the socialists, okay? They don't even have a brain amongst them. So get ready. The red tide is going to, at this point, wipe them out, and it's going to be, people are going to be arrested. There's going to be people have sanctions put on them for meddling. We've already been told that Trump has already caught China, Russia, and Iran in meddling in our election.
Hello, don't forget the United Kingdom.
Well, they just overtly do it because they're Five Eyes. They come over and do whatever they want.
Well, they think they own us. And apparently they do on paper. Well, good luck telling the American people out there that you own us.
It wasn't the Russians who meddled in the last election. It was the British, as you keep saying, and the Chinese completely meddled and didn't even get caught. And they're doing it again, and this time they're going to get caught. Britain got smashed. The number one propaganda machine in Britain, the Strategic Communications Laboratory, it got shut down, folks, because Trump pushed back on them. But there's going to be a whole lot more pushback. So get ready. If you want to give illegal money to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, or get China, you want to keep donating the way that you do through Hollywood and all of those big money people out there, or the stars who donate, where do you people think that money's coming from? China. China bought Hollywood. China bought Washington, D.C., bought Mitch McConnell, bought Dianne Feinstein, bought both parties, bought the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So if you think that China's not our enemy, you're wrong. If you think there's not meddling going on in this election, you're wrong. And if you think Trump is not going to go after them, you're wrong also. So get ready to see some arrests, and get ready to see more people like Hillary Clinton move her operations to an unextraditable country and city like Shanghai. Because why? They have been caught. And if they do it again this time, that's why thieves go to jail, because they just don't stop. They keep repeating the same crimes. So go ahead, Hillary. Try to intervene this time. See what happens. Try Eric Schmidt. Try China. Try Russia. Oh, that's right. The Russians didn't interfere last time. A matter of fact, Robert Mueller arrested another Russian that we'll never see just the other day to show that Russians really meddled in our last election, though we had 3 massive joint investigations done by the intelligence communities that say that there was literally nothing except 2 Russian television, actually network television stations that supposedly affected America's election. There was no Russian meddling, folks. There were some Russians who were meddling, but the real meddlers were, of course, Christopher Steele, working with our own weaponized FBI, CIA, Department of Justice, and State Department. Those
Don't
are the real
forget
meddlers.
Robert Hannigan. I know we're concluding, but they're all in on it.
Oh, Robert Hannigan came over and he meddled in the election by spying on Trump and Trump Towers through Fort Meade, Maryland, the headquarters of the NSA. It doesn't get any thicker. It doesn't get any guiltier than what we've already seen. And that is the reason Trump is just, again, letting them put the nooses around their own necks and jump off those gallows.